We are back after a week off. We've got a lot to talk about, all Pistons related. I know that the Red Wings have a couple signings going on. Maybe we'll do a Red Wings episode here soon. But this one will be a Pistons specific episode. We're going to review the hiring of JB Bickerstaff. We're going to look at the Tim Hardaway Jr. and Quentin Grimes trade. And then we will break down the Tobias Harris signing.
There's the snap. Blitz comes. Mayfield back. Loads. Throws. Picked up by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Intercepted by the Lions. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Derek Barnes. Reggie Miller. And it's blocked again. What a block.
Lead pass in for Larkin. In space for Raymond. And he scores! Lucas Raymond!
Welcome back to Detroit Sports Talk. Today's date is July 1st, 2024, and I am your host, Bobby Buckets. We took a week off. Last week was birthday week. Bridget and I have the same birthday, and we decided to redo our laundry room, and that took way longer than we thought it was going to take. And by the time we had free time after we were done for the day, I was too exhausted to want to do a podcast. And since it was birthday week and Bridget and I share the same birthday, just decided not to do a podcast. And given that the timing worked out well, that today is free agency, this whole week is NBA free agency, let alone NHL free agency. It just felt like a good time to get back into it today. So thanks again for taking the time to tune in. Be sure to like the show, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts on today's topics, and follow me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. For our updates across the sports world, I mean, there's been a whole lot going on. PG-13 to the Sixers, Isaiah Hartenstein to the Thunder. The Thunder are just so good. I could do a whole episode just on the Thunder's roster. I think their roster is incredible. What else happened? Klay Thompson to the Mavs. That's a big one. So a lot going on in the NBA right now. The NHL free agency I know is going down. I'm just not as well versed in the NHL universe to know what's going on there. So that would take some time to break down. I have not prepared for this episode at all, but it's because I feel confident in my ability to hold the conversation with myself, looking at myself in the camera with these three topics. So the Red Wings one, maybe we'll do a little bit later in the week. I guess it depends on what the news looks like. But that will definitely take a little bit more time. This one will not. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right. So the first thing, and this was a couple days ago, maybe it was Friday, but the timing was very interesting that we hired JB Bickerstaff as our new head coach, and that the timing of that came right before free agency, which technically is probably a good thing. So that the free agents that you sign, they know which coach they're going to play for, what kind of system they're going to play in, defensive schemes, offensive schemes. You at least have an idea of who you're going to be playing for before you decide to ink a contract with the Pistons. So JB Bickerstaff hired as the Pistons' new head coach after being the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was a 5-year deal. With the fifth year being a team option, sort of how Monty Williams was really hired as an 8-year deal, even though it was reported as 6, because he had 2 years of team options on that deal. So same thing with JB Bickerstaff. His 5th year is a team option, but 4 years. We haven't heard the money yet. Maybe you guys have. I have not seen that yet. If you have, please let me know on Twitter or in the comment section below. I would love to know what he's making per year. But let's go ahead and talk about JB Bickerstaff. So I know that his dad was a head coach for a while. That is how he got his first assistant coaching job. A little bit of nepotism in there with the Charlotte Hornets because he was 25 when he became an assistant coach. He is 45 now. So I think people probably view JB as being an older guy just because this is going to be his 3rd or 4th coaching stop, given he was an interim a few times, but he's coached a couple times. He's been a head coach a couple times already, but he's still only 45 years old. So still a young head coach, but He was an assistant coach for a while, started at Charlotte with his dad, moved on to Minnesota, on to Houston, until he took over as an interim head coach with Houston back in 2015 and 2016. After that, they moved on, and he moved on to Memphis. And this is really when his head coaching career started to pick off. So if you guys remember David Fizdale, take that for data. That guy. He was fired from Memphis back in 2017, and that is when JB Bickerstaff took over. So in 2017, 2018, that season, the Grizzlies ended up winning 22 games. So David Fizdale was fired pretty quickly into the season. And so JB Bickerstaff ended up finishing the season out where they won 22 games, and they decide to sign JB as their full-time head coach instead of interim. And so in 2018, that is his first full-time head coaching position, where he was brought on. He was hired as the head coach, whereas previous two stops the previous year was an interim position, and then the same thing with Houston. So this is his first full season as a head coach when he was hired for that role. Memphis winning 22 games the year before when he was interim head coach. He turned that into 33 wins the next year. So he grew their wins by 50%. That is an awesome, awesome feat to be able to do. Yet his 1 year in Cleveland, or his 1 year in Memphis, got him fired. And it was because they didn't make the playoffs. So how does that make any sense, where he took a team who won 22 games, took them to 33 games, and then was fired because they didn't like the progress? So I think, counterpoint, JB Bickerstaff was seen as a scapegoat in Memphis and a scapegoat in Cleveland. For the Memphis part, it's because of that specifically. He took a team that won 22 games. Granted, he coached for half of the season, majority of the season, whatever it was. But the next season turned around and grew their wins by 50%. So people think that he did not deserve to get fired in that spot, given he made progress with the team, but apparently it wasn't enough progress for ownership at Memphis, and they let him go at the age of 39. He is brought on as an assistant coach, the top assistant coach in Cleveland in 2019. And then again, he becomes the interim coach at the end of that season. I forget who was there for Cleveland. Actually, we could probably take a look. But so as soon as he was fired from Memphis, he gets picked up as the assistant. Oh, John Beeline. Duh, I should have known that, because that was the whole thug thing when he called his team some thugs, and then they thought he was racist, and then they canned him. So JB Bickerstaff took over for John Beeline, and then was hired again as the full-time head coach. So his first year as a full-time head coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers, they won 22 games, just like his season with the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, instead of turning that into 33 wins the next year and growing it by 50%, this dude doubles it. So his second year as a full-time head coach, he wins 44 games. His third year, they win 51 games. So 2 years ago, the Cleveland Cavaliers won 51 games, went to the playoffs. And this past year, before he got fired at Cleveland, they won 48 games and beat the Orlando Magic in a playoff series. So they won a playoff series as well, yet still canned. So that is why JB Bickerstaff is viewed as a scapegoat in his two firings as a head coach. And granted, I forget which three, but it was like Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and Darius Garland all missed upward of 60 games this season, and they still won 48 games. They've been a very, very good defensive team. Granted, if you're starting Mobley, Okoro, and Jarrett Allen as your front court, that is a very good defensive front court. But JB Bickerstaff has the makings of a good head coach. I think some of his downfall were his adjustments in the playoffs. I think that's one of the big things I've heard from the Cleveland side of things as to why he got fired, is just not being able to adjust in the playoffs. And his playoff record is like 6-11 or something along those lines, 6-12. But frankly, I think JB has proved himself twice, once in Memphis and once in Cleveland, that he can take a young and developing team and develop them into a successful team. So he's gone from 22 wins to 33 wins in Memphis before he was fired. And then he went 22 wins in Cleveland to 44 to 51 to 48. Now, adding Donovan Mitchell is certainly going to help that. But frankly, JB Bickerstaff has proven that he can take a developing team, grow those young guys, develop those young guys, and make them a competitive team. I don't expect us to have a 44-win season, but, he doubled from 22 to 44. Could he double from 14 to 28 for the Detroit Pistons? I would love nothing more than to win 28 games next year. That would be a massive upgrade for this team. So frankly, I was on board with Borrego because the connections just tied so deep with Trajan and Fred Vinson and Michael Blackstone. So, but he pulled out. I assumed it would have been Sean Sweeney because he seemed to be the front runner. But if you want to go with a guy who has a proven track record at taking teams and developing them into something, positive, JB Bickerstaff is the perfect hire. So let me know what you guys first heard when you heard about the hiring of JB Bickerstaff. Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter. The next thing that we are going to talk about is the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade. So the Pistons gave up Quentin Grimes for Tim Hardaway Jr. and 3 second-round picks. One of those picks is the 2025 Toronto second-round pick. Toronto, not expected to be a good team in the East this year. There's a couple teams that will be bottom feeders in the East, Toronto being one of them. So this very well could be a pick in the 30s. It most likely will. So kind of a late first rounder. And then 2 2028 seconds. So we got a 2025 second, an early one, and 2 2028 seconds. And golly, did this split up the Pistons online community. First off, let's talk about Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes played in 6 games for the Pistons. He clearly wasn't healthy. He was hurt. They shut him down. And he if you only look at his Pistons tenure, he was terrible. But it's not fair to just only look at those 6-game sample size and not count the 2.5 years prior to coming to Detroit, and to just take that 6-game sample size to come to your conclusion. So I can understand why people are getting upset that Quentin Grimes was maybe didn't fetch so much, or maybe that we gave up Grimes in this deal as opposed to just absorbing Tim and the 3 seconds. But frankly, it just seems that Trajan didn't have a higher opinion on Quentin Grimes. Quentin has been hurt for majority of his short career so far, so maybe he's just not believing in Quentin's knees. The hard thing is it's hard to get tied up in losing Quentin Grimes. There wasn't any connection to Detroit. It's not like he's Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren who has been here. We drafted him. He's been here for his entire career so far, so I don't have a ton of ties to Quentin Grimes. I do think he was a cool archetype that would have fit well next to Cade Cunningham. But alas, we will never know. And that's because we have Tim Hardaway Jr. now. So you have the 2-3 combo of Tim Hardaway Jr. coming back to the state where he played college in. Quentin Grimes was 24 years old. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to be 32 years old this next season. Now, here's what Tim Hardaway Jr. does have going for him. From a statistical standpoint, this guy has averaged 7 3-point attempts or more since 2017. So this is a guy who is going to get up 3-point shots no matter what. 7 attempts per game, 7.6 and 7.7 the last 2 years. So he's even approaching 8. And frankly, he can shoot 10 threes per game as a Piston. I bet he plays 24 to 28 minutes a night. I'm not sure that he starts, but the tricky thing is, what kind of Tim Hardaway Jr. are you getting? So I'm looking right now at his basketball reference page, and I'm going to look at his last 6 seasons. He has 3 seasons where he has shot 39%, and he has 3 seasons where he has shot 35% or lower. So he has a 32%, a 34%, and a 35% last year. But he also has a 40%, a 39, and a 39. So if you are getting the THJ that is in the high 30s and is shooting 8 threes per game, he's going to be a fantastic addition to this team. We do not have a scorer like Tim Hardaway Jr. We do not have a shooter like Tim Hardaway Jr. Actually, maybe Tech. I would argue that Tech can be kind of that high volume, high percentage shooter where it's just stay at the 3-point line. Don't come inside the arc. Let Cade be the one to get inside the arc, break down the defense, and just be ready to shoot when Cade kicks it to you. That's what Tech can do. That's what Tim Hardaway Jr. can do. And they can do it at a very high level. The tricky part is, what Tim Hardaway Jr. are you getting? Now, defensively, he's not good. He's not somebody that's going to be that 3-and-D type like Quentin would have been, but he's not the shooter like Quentin is either. Quentin is not the shooter like Tim Hardaway Jr. is. THJ is not the defender like Quentin is, but he is a better shooter. He's a high-volume shooter, good percentage. Quentin also had a good percentage, but it comes to a point too, like Fred Vinson is going to be working on all these young guys' jumpers, and it's like he's going to be busy 12 hours a day, 7 days a week with how many young guys need improvements in their jump shot. And if you didn't believe in Quentin Grimes, if you didn't believe that you were going to extend him at the end of this year, since he's going to be a restricted free agent at the end of next season, I don't blame you for moving him for assets and getting a guy who is a high volume 3-point shooter, because this team has been in the bottom 5 for who knows how long in 3-point attempts, 3-point percentages. I mean, I can see why you make this deal, but I can also see why people would be upset. But frankly, Tim Hardaway Jr. is on a 1-year deal. You could even flip him at the deadline if maybe he's shooting at 40% on 8 threes per game. Maybe you can get something else for him. So I'm a fan of this Tim Hardaway Jr. deal. I also prioritize threes, though. I've been wanting to shoot more threes, get guys who can shoot. Not only shoot more threes, but make more threes at the same time. And Tim Hardaway Jr. can do that. We're going to re-sign Tech as well. He'll be able to do that. So it's nice to see that we're adding players who are known as reliable 3-point shooters, volume 3-point shooters from beyond the arc. So let me know what you guys think of the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade. Did you like the trade? Did you not like the trade? What would you have changed? Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter. Tobias Harris is returning to the Detroit Pistons on a 2-year, $52 million deal. So Tobias Harris will be making $26 million next year and the year after that. I love the deal. Frankly, I'm not a huge Tobias Harris fan, but I'm a fan of quality NBA players that can help this roster, and that's exactly what Tobias Harris is. We do not have any true power forwards on this team. Maybe Tech, if you think he is, but I'm more of the opinion that he's like a 3-4 instead of a 4-3. I view Tobias as a 4-3. Last year in Philadelphia, he averaged 17 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. So he's just a quality NBA player, and one who wanted to come to Detroit. I think that so far on Twitter today, there were a lot of people who I guess were upset that Jalen Smith got a good deal. Najee Marshall was got for a good deal. Derrick Jones Jr. was got for a good deal, and that Trajan wasn't spending money on those kind of players to get that, but who knows if they wanted to come here. right? Tobias Harris, his wife has connections to Michigan. He's played in Detroit before. He was linked to being interested in Detroit back in like December or January, and we went and got him. It's a player who wants to be in Detroit, who wants to play, who enjoys Michigan, and frankly, you have to get a player like that if he wants to join your team. He shot 35% from 3 this year. That's his lowest percentage since 2018. So he has shot above 36% the prior 4 years on 4 to 5 attempts per game. I just think Tobias fits in so well at our starting power forward spot. You can play him 30 minutes per game. He's going to be another offensive force next to Cade. That Cade can rely on a guy who can get you 17 to 20 points per game, can hit a couple threes, can hit threes off the dribble, can drive into the lane and make the right read to kick it out if he can draw in the defense. So Tobias Harris can put the ball on the floor. He can attack closeouts. He can play make a little bit. And frankly, those are all things that have been missing from the power forward position when we start Stu at the power forward spot. So free agency, there's still more and more that is left to unwind. I think we still have like $26 million in cap space left over. But one of the underrated things about going out and getting Tobias Harris, going out and getting a true starting power forward, is it pushes Stu to be a center where he needs to be used, where he hasn't been used since his rookie year. Let him be a stretch 5 defensive center who can protect the rim, but could also play switch defense. He could go out and guard some guards on a pick if you needed to switch. He's just very versatile, and frankly, I would love to use him at the 5 spot next to Tobias, stretch the floor out, open it up for Cade, Asar, Jaden Ivey. So I love that signing Tobias also pushes Stu to be a center, but do we go and we get another center? Do we trade one of the young guys? We'll have to find out over the next few days, but you can best believe that you can come here and we will break that all down with any more moves that will be heading our way in Pistons fandom, which you better believe that there will be. Maybe even today. Who knows? But what are your guys' thoughts on the Tobias Harris signing? Let me know in the comments below or over on Twitter. All right, that is it for this episode of Detroit Sports Talk. It was good to be back. Good to be back after that birthday week off. So I appreciate you guys coming back to tune in. So be sure to like today's show, subscribe to the channel, comment below to share your thoughts, and please make sure to follow me on Twitter at Bobby Buckets. I will see you guys all in the next episode. Peace.